Things would have turned out differently if Garp had stepped in and helped Ace during Marineford, but his duties as a Marine didn't allow it. However, what if Garp had become a pirate instead of a Marine? Well, in this story, Garp is known across the world as the Fist of the Sea, a legendary figure among pirates and Marines alike. Garp stands as one of the emperors of the sea who rule the New World. Unlike the other emperors, Garp's rise to power was not driven by a lust for treasure or fame. He sought freedom from corruption, the freedom to live by his own rules, to protect his family, and to chart his own course through the seas. Years before his rise as an emperor, Garp was a renowned Marine, hailed as a hero for his battles against the most notorious pirates. But the death of Roger, who entrusted Garp with the care of his unborn son Ace, planted a seed of doubt in Garp's mind. Garp made a choice that would alter the path of history as he saw corruption escalating among the Marine ranks. He gave up on the Marines and adopted a pirate lifestyle. He soon gained notoriety as a pirate by assembling a crew of people he met along the way. He established his own dominion in the New World and questioned the legitimacy of the world government. Now he reigns as one of the emperors of the sea, his Jolly Roger, a symbol of rebellion and justice. Despite his infamy, Garp's heart has always been tied to his family. Deep in the East Blue, on the peaceful Dawn Island, Garp made sure his grandson Luffy was kept safe. Garp often visited, bringing his wild presence to the mountain home where Luffy, Ace, and Sabo grew up. Luffy, in particular, idolized his grandfather's strength and spirit, not knowing the full extent of Garp's reputation as one of the mightiest pirates in the world. Garp's visits were filled with adventure and chaos. He had sparring sessions where he would push the children to their limits, stern lectures about strength, and warnings about the dangers of the sea. Despite being a pirate, Garp still held the same ideals he had as a Marine. He wanted to raise Luffy, Ace, and Sabo to be strong and self-reliant. He instilled in them the importance of freedom, family, and honor. Garp's decision to become a pirate left a deep mark on his family, particularly on his son, Monkey D. Dragon. Dragon had followed in his father's footsteps by joining the Marines, hoping to uphold justice. But as he rose through the ranks, he saw the same rot and corruption that Garp had witnessed. Instead of joining his father on the lawless path of piracy, though, Dragon chose a different route. He abandoned the Marines and formed the Revolutionary Army, a group dedicated to overthrowing the corrupt world government. He and Garp grew estranged, their ideals clashing despite a shared goal of justice. Dragon couldn't agree with Garp's chaotic freedom as a pirate, a life that involved dangerous risks and constant battles against the world government. Instead, he chose to fight from the shadows, seeing the revolution as the only true way to bring about change. Garp, however, held no ill will toward his son, respecting Dragon's choice even as they walked separate paths. For Garp, his life as a pirate was about freedom and protecting his loved ones, while Dragon believed in a grander vision for a better world. Sabo, Ace, and Luffy idolized their grandfather. For them, Garp was the ideal pirate, a symbol of strength, freedom, and adventure. While most people feared the Fist of the Sea, the boys saw him as an unstoppable force who lived on his own terms, defying the world government and taking on all challengers without hesitation. Garp's presence was larger than life, and he took a hands-on role in training the boys. With a strict but loving hand, he made sure they were prepared for the harsh realities of the pirate's life. Unlike the carefree tales of treasure hunts and brawls they read in books, Garp's version of piracy was about strength, loyalty, and carving out one's own path in the world. To Ace and Sabo, he was everything they aspired to be, a figure of untamed freedom who laughed in the face of danger and refused to bow to anyone. Shanks, a notorious pirate, frequently visited Dawn Island as well. Shanks found the island a perfect spot to rest and relax away from the chaos of the New World. And despite it being his territory, Garp allowed the young pirate to come there, as he had known him from Gold D. Rogers' time. Shanks' easygoing attitude made him an instant favorite with the boys. Shanks was laid back and carefree, but Garp was strict and demanding. He taught them that being a pirate was about the spirit of adventure just as much as it was about strength, and he urged them to pursue their dreams. It was Shanks who unintentionally provided Luffy with a devil fruit that would transform his life. During one of his stays, Luffy accidentally ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi, gaining his rubbery powers. Garp was furious at first, berated rubbery powers. Garp made a dangerous thing happen under his nose, but in time he accepted it, even incorporating Luffy's new abilities into his training regimen. Under Garp's guidance, Luffy learned to control his powers, even if his reckless nature often led to trouble. Garp's training was relentless and brutal, by forcing the boys to spar against one another and face difficult physical challenges that left them bruised and beaten. He pushed them to the limit. Under this rigorous schedule, Ace and Sabo flourished, developing their innate skills as they matched one another's strengths. They were a formidable combination because of Ace's fierce determination and Sabo's innate strategic thinking. They both learned to predict each other's moves as if they were extensions of each other. When the time was right, Garp made his decision. Ace and Sabo would come with him, leaving Luffy behind to grow stronger. Luffy was furious, feeling betrayed and abandoned, but Garp was firm. He told Luffy that he needed to wait a bit longer before he could set out with them. With a heavy heart, Ace and Sabo bid their younger brother farewell, promising to visit often. As they sailed the Grand Line, Ace and Sabo grew rapidly under Garp's guidance. They learned the art of navigation, survival in harsh environments, and how to wield haki, a power that Garp emphasized as essential for any any pirate worth their salt. Ace developed proficiency with armament hockey, his fists becoming almost as deadly as Garp's, while Sawbo's observation hockey grew sharp enough to read movements and sense the presence of others from afar. Garp's pride in his grandsons was evident, though he rarely showed it, often pushing them harder and challenging them to take on tougher enemies. They clashed with bounty hunters, rival crews, and marines who sought to take down Garp's infamous ship, all the while forging their own reputations as rising stars in the pirate world. Word of Garp's grandsons spread quickly, and their bounties grew. They were no longer just the grandsons of an emperor, they were becoming legends in their own right. Ace became known for his fierce fighting style and refusal to back down, while Sawbo became known for his cunning tactics and precise strikes, earning both of them significant infamy. Together, they were an unstoppable force, and even the world government began to take notice of the two young pirates. While Garp and his crew carved a path of destruction across the Grand Line, Luffy's adventures took on a life of their own. Determined to make his own path, Luffy left On Island without waiting for Garp's approval. With each new island he visited, he gathered more members for his crew, forming a ragtag group that would become known as the Straw Hat Pirates. Luffy's declaration of becoming the Pirate King, much to Garp's amusement, was met with laughter and pride. Garp saw himself in Luffy's unyielding spirit. Every time Luffy's bounty increased, Garp would laugh and wave the wanted poster around, showing it to Ace and Sawbo as they continued their relentless training and battles in the New World. Though he never explicitly expressed it, he was proud and looked forward to the day when he and Luffy would finally cross paths on the high seas. However, Garp, Ace, and Sawbo were preparing for their biggest test to date, while Luffy and his team were gaining strength. The conquest of Wano. Wano was a mysterious and terrifying place where the Yonko, Kaido, the strongest creature in the world, ruled oppressively over its people. With his 3 calamities, legions of strong gifters, and other formidable fighters from the New World, Kaido had fortified Wano into his unbreakable territory for years. But Garp was never one to be deterred by a challenge, and with the strength of his crew, he set his sights on Wano. He had no interest in Kaido's territory or his claim to power. Garp's motivation was simpler. He wanted to liberate Wano from Kaido's tyrannical rule and test both Ace and Sawbo. With Ace and Sawbo at his side, Garp began his assault on Wano. They sailed into the land of the samurai with no stealth, only pure brute force, declaring their challenge for all to hear. The skies above Wano turned black with storm clouds as the Fist of the Sea landed, and the crew prepared for war. The initial invasion was chaos. Garp's fleet clashed with the forces of the beast pirates at the shores of Wano, the thunderous impact of cannon fire shaking the very foundations of Onigashima. Garp, Ace, and Sawbo led the charge, each cutting through waves of Kaido's minions as if they were mere nuisances. The battlefield was a maelstrom of fists and crushing blows as Garp's crew tore through Kaido's ranks. Ace took on Queen, the brazen second in command, their battle setting the sky ablaze as Ace's hockey-infused fists matched Queen's mechanical and biological weaponry blow for blow. Meanwhile, Sawbo engaged King, the deadly and enigmatic swordsman who guarded Kaido's throne. Their duel a rapid blur of flame and steel that spread across the battlefield. Meanwhile, Garp moved with the force of a hurricane, tearing through Kaido's forces with every step. His fist split the earth beneath his feet and sent shockwaves through the ground, toppling buildings. He embodied raw power that no average man could hope to resist, making him unstoppable. Then Kaido emerged through the smoke and confusion, his dragon form looming over the battlefield and creating a hideous silhouette against the stormy sky. With a roar that rocked the sky, Kaido shot a huge burst of flame out of his mouth, warping the air and destroying the storm clouds in the process. The flames parted around Garp as he used his armament hockey to fend off the onslaught, and he stood unflinching as the torrent of fire swept over him. With a booming laugh, Garp leaped high into the sky, his fist drawn back, darkened with hockey so intense that it crackled with lightning. He met Kaido's massive form midair, the impact of his punch splitting the storm clouds above and creating a shockwave that sent both of them crashing to the ground, shaking all of Wano. The earth cracked under the force, creating a massive crater as both combatants rose, unharmed, ready for the true battle to begin. Kaido, in his full dragon form, lunged at Garp with blinding speed, swinging his massive tail like a whip. Garp dodged, using Soru to appear right in front of Kaido's face, delivering a hockey-infused uppercut that rattled Kaido's massive jaw. The Yonko reeled back, his eyes blazing with fury, as he reverted to his hybrid form, wielding his massive club with devastating force. When Kaido swung his club with all of his strength, the ground shattered. Garp struck the club with his fists, causing a power struggle that echoed throughout Wano. As they fought, lightning crackled all around them, and the force of their blows sent shockwaves that shook the sea and toppled mountains. Kaido's monstrous strength was met by Garp's unyielding will. Each time Kaido struck, Garp responded in kind, his fists moving with a speed and ferocity that defied his age. Kaido unleashed his dragon's breath, a torrent of fire that Garp punched through with a single blow, splitting the flames like a wave crashing against rock. Garp retaliated with his own attack, an advanced conqueror's hockey strike that bypassed Kaido's defenses and landed directly on his chest, making the Yonko step back a little. The battle dragged on for hours, each fighter refusing to yield. Garp's raw power power and iron will were met by Kaido's relentless fury and unbreakable body. The skies turned red as their haki clashed, the very air itself charged with their willpower. With every hit, the battlefield changed, the rivers diverted, the mountains crumbled, and the ground itself became a wasteland. As the titanic clash raged, Ace and Sabo were locked in their own fierce battles. Ace's fight with Queen was a fiery spectacle, with both warriors trading explosive blows amidst the rubble of Onegashima's fallen structures. Ace's mastery of haki allowed him to bypass Queen's durable cyborg body, unleashing devastating punches that left craters in the ground. Meanwhile, Sabo clashed with King. King's swordsmanship was unmatched, but Sabo had completely mastered observation haki, and he had the strength to back up all of his moves. The two danced across the battlefield as their attacks created shockwaves that tore apart the surrounding landscape. In the end, it was Sabo's raw skill and adaptability that turned the tide. He disarmed King with a devastating haki-enhanced strike and ended the duel with a powerful blow that sent King crashing into the wreckage. With Queen and King defeated, Ace and Sabo regrouped and watched as their grandfather stood alone against Kaido, the fate of Wano hanging in the balance. The final clash between Garp and Kaido was a spectacle of pure force. Garp's fists blurred as he delivered a flurry of devastating blows, each one amplified by Conqueror's haki and advanced armament. In response, Kaido launched his strongest attack yet, concentrating all of his energy into a single blow that had the capacity to destroy entire islands. However, Garp directly confronted Kaido's blow with a roar that reverberated throughout the battlefield. The shockwave from their attacks was so strong that it sent a gust of wind across Wano, upending what remained of Onigashima. Finally, Garp's fist broke through Kaido's defenses and hit the Yonko in the chest, sending him flying backward and breaking his ribs. Kaido lost for the first time in his life. As the dust settled, Wano was liberated, and Garp stood victorious. With Kaido's defeat, the land was freed from his tyranny. The Fist of the Sea only grew stronger. News of the Yonko's defeat spread like wildfire, shaking the balance of power in the New World. The Marines, the world government, and the other emperors took notice. Garp's reign as one of the emperors had just been solidified even further. Wano became a symbol of Garp's strength. The Straw Hats had arrived in the Sabaudi archipelago in the meantime, but they were unprepared for the mayhem that would follow. The inexperienced crew was unable to cope with Admiral Kizaru's arrival and the Marines' unstoppable power through the Pacifista units. Bartholomew Kuma's powers overpowered and split up the Straw Hats one by one, sending them flying to various parts of the globe. News swept across the Grand Line like wildfire as the Straw Hats dealt with their respective destinies. Wano had been liberated. The legendary Emperor Garp had done the unthinkable. The tale of Garp's triumph over the Beast Pirates and the fall of Kaido echoed across the seas, reaching even the farthest, most isolated islands. The remnants of the Beast Pirates fled Wano with their wounded commander. They sought refuge with another Yonko, Big Mom, whose power and influence allowed them to regroup. The remnants merged with Big Mom's forces, creating a formidable alliance that threatened to shift the balance of power once again. This union between the two emperors, Kaido and Big Mom, was a clear declaration of vengeance and a promise of future turmoil. The news of Wano's liberation reached the separated Straw Hats, and each of them, despite their isolation, felt a surge of hope. Their paths were uncertain, but the knowledge that Garp had accomplished the impossible lit a fire within each of them. They all managed to return to Wano, the one location they felt they had to be in somehow. Luffy arrived first, his heart heaving for his crew, but they were all waiting for him when he stepped onto the Wano shores. The same unbreakable bond that had bound them together since the first day of their voyage had brought them together, one by one. As if they had never been apart, the Straw Hats' laughter filled the air as they reconnected and told stories of their individual adventures. However, they soon realized that they still had a long way to go before they could confront the New World's ever-increasing threats. Though they were together again, they all knew the truth. They were not ready. The gap in strength was clear, and the recent loss at Sabaudi weighed heavily on them. The time for training had come. The crew made the difficult decision to part ways once more, each of them choosing to return to the islands where they had been sent by Kuma. These islands held the keys to their growth, with harsh environments and unique mentors promising to make them stronger than ever before. But Luffy, unlike his crewmates, chose a different path. He had seen his grandfather's power firsthand and witnessed the strength of Ace and Sabo. He couldn't afford to wait. He needed to close the gap faster than ever. Instead of leaving, Luffy stayed behind in Wano to formally train with Garp, Ace, and Sabo once again. The decision marked a turning point in Luffy's journey. He was determined not just to survive the New World, but to conquer it. Luffy's training under Garp, Ace, and Sabo was like nothing he had experienced before. Every day was a brutal test of his limits, a relentless cycle of intense combat training, survival in Wano's unforgiving wilderness, and mastery of haki. Garp's focus was on raw power and endurance, turning Luffy's rubber body into a weapon capable of withstanding and delivering unimaginable force. Ace and Sabo took a different approach, helping Luffy refine his observation and armament haki, training him in advanced techniques that pushed his capabilities to new heights. Luffy's stubbornness and determination quickly earned Garp's respect. The training was a gauntlet. Days would blur together as he battled Ace, matched Sabo's speed and skill, and took on Garp's earth-shattering punches that left craters in Wano's landscape. But with each battle, Luffy grew stronger, his techniques sharper, his his resolve deeper. He learned how to push his observation hockey to the point where he could predict even the most subtle movements in a fight, and his mastery of armament hockey allowed him to bypass even the toughest defenses. By the end of the first year, Garp began teaching Luffy the basics of Advanced Conqueror's hockey, a rare and powerful skill only a select few could master. While Luffy trained in Wano, the seas outside grew darker. Kaido's alliance with Big Mom solidified, their forces combining into a unified threat that challenged even the Marines' authority. Rumors of their monstrous army spread, and islands fell under their rule one by one. The world trembled under the weight of their combined power, and whispers of a coming war reached even Wano's shores. Big Mom's crew, bolstered by the remnants of the Beast Pirates, became a new force known as the Rocks Alliance. Kaido's thirst for revenge and Big Mom's insatiable hunger for power made them the most dangerous threat in the New World. They vowed to retake Wano and crush anyone who stood in their path, especially Garp and his crew. Meanwhile, Luffy had reached new heights as he trained under the watchful eyes of his grandfather and brothers. He learned how to integrate his devil fruit powers with his advanced hockey, pushing his body beyond its limits and mastering techniques that seemed impossible for a rubber man. By the end of the 2 years, Luffy was not the same reckless pirate who had entered Wano. He was someone ready to challenge the emperors of the sea. Meanwhile, the Straw Hats each underwent their own transformations, finding powerful new abilities and honing their skills. They learned from their experiences and mentors, training themselves to become a crew worthy of standing by Luffy's side. After 2 years, the Straw Hats set sail once more, each of them stronger and more determined than ever before. They made their way back to Wano, the place where they had decided to part ways to reunite with their captain. As the Thousand Sunny approached the shores, they were greeted by a new Luffy, a man who stood with the confidence of someone who had survived brutal training and emerged stronger for it. Garp, Ace, and Sabo were there to witness the reunion. Luffy, with a grin as wide as the Grand Line, welcomed his crew back. The training was over, and the real adventure was about to begin. Wano, once a symbol of tyranny, had become a beacon of hope and a stronghold for their alliance. They would take on the New World together. But the looming shadow of the Rocks Alliance meant that their greatest challenges were yet to come. In this timeline, one major change is that Marineford never happened. Blackbeard would still gain the Yami Yami no Mi, but since Ace isn't a part of Whitebeard's crew, he wouldn't be involved with the pirate. Whitebeard would still retain his strength as an emperor of the sea, while Blackbeard would somehow form his crew of notorious pirates and would begin gaining infamy on the seas. However, it wouldn't be on the same level as the original timeline due to the fact that he wouldn't be able to gain the Gura Gura no Mi from Whitebeard. The Marines would bolster their strength significantly by the end of the 2 years, as they would have both the Pacifista and the Seraphim. Jinbei would still be locked up and impelled down, along with Crocodile, since Luffy never entered the prison. As such, the Cross Guild would also never form. But the new alliance we have is the Rocks Alliance, as Big Mom and Kaido would become an exceptionally formidable force. Shanks, on the other hand, would still be an emperor of the sea, and his power and territory would speak for itself. Dragon would also continue to bolster the revolutionary army and would soon begin his own plans of rebellion. So what's going to happen after the 2-year training period? Let's find out! The Straw Hats had been sailing smoothly, growing stronger with each passing day when the unexpected happened. A mysterious summons arrived for Sanji, bearing the unmistakable crest of Big Mom. It was a command to attend a tea party on Whole Cake Island. Sanji knew it was a trap, an attempt to pull him back into his family's grasp and force him into a marriage with one of Big Mom's daughters. Sanji left the crew to protect them, but no one would take it standing back. This time, the Straw Hats were united and ready. Every member of the crew decided to infiltrate Whole Cake Island together, fully aware of the dangers that lay ahead. They weren't alone, though. Ace and Sabo volunteered to join the mission once they heard the news. It was a full-scale rescue operation. Sanji wasn't just a crew member, he was family. The journey to Whole Cake Island was tense. Using stealth and wit, the Straw Hats snuck onto the island, but that wouldn't last long considering Luffy. The situation escalated quickly, and the Straw Hats found themselves in the heart of Big Mom's territory, dodging the bizarre inhabitants and powerful homies that guarded every corner of the island. Ace and Sabo played the most important roles in distracting Big Mom's strongest lieutenants, engaging in fierce battles with the likes of Charlotte Katakuri and Charlotte Smoothie. Because of Ace's fierceness and Sabo's slyness, the Straw Hats were able to advance farther into the island. The Straw Hats were reunited and Sanji was eventually recovered, but they were still in danger. While the Straw Hats and their allies fought their way through the chaos of Whole Cake Island, the unthinkable happened back in Wano. The surprise attack was carried out by the Marines, led by Fleet Admiral Sengoku. Knowing that Garp's crew was away aiding the Straw Hats, they saw an opportunity to strike. Wano, a liberated land still recovering from the fall of Kaido, was left vulnerable. The Marines descended upon Wano with overwhelming force, intent on capturing the legendary pirate who had toppled another emperor. They knew this was the one chance they'd get to take in a Yonko. Garp fought valiantly, but he was outnumbered and without his most trusted allies. Sengoku himself was a force to be reckoned with as his Buddha form clashed with Garp. But Garp realized that this clash wasn't something that Wano could endure. In a desperate final stand, he allowed himself to be captured to protect the people of Wano from further destruction. After seriously hurting him, the Marines shackled him in heavy chains, and word of his capture quickly spread throughout the oceans. The terrible news reached the Straw Hats just as they were ready to leave Whole Cake Island. Garp had been captured and Wano was under Marine control. Luffy's heart sank, but before they could fully process the situation, the tide of battle turned. In the midst of the chaos at Big Mom's tea party, a familiar face arrived. Red-haired Shanks! He appeared with his entire crew, and his powerful presence immediately changed the dynamics of the battlefield. The chaos subsided as Shanks, with a wave of Conqueror's haki that left even Big Mom's strongest fighters shaken, offered a truce. Shanks, sensing Luffy's turmoil over Garp's capture, promised he would handle Big Mom and the remnants of Kaido's alliance. The Straw Hats, Ace, and Sabo could go after Garp while he held the line. Undeterred and their pride on the line, the two emperors quickly continued the assault. The alliance was quick to launch a counterattack against Shanks and trigger a massive battle that would later become known as the War of the New World. The battle was nothing short of cataclysmic. Luffy, facing the might of two emperors, pushed himself to his absolute limit. In the heat of battle, he felt something awaken deep within him, a power he had sensed but never fully grasped before. He was already in an incredibly stressful situation upon hearing of his grandpa's capture, and the wounds he sustained from this battle were pushing him to the edge. That's when his heart suddenly started beating like a drum. His rubber body began to glow with ethereal energy, his movements becoming more fluid and unpredictable as his hair went white and he began floating in the air. This was the ultimate manifestation of his powers. Gear 5! With Gear 5, Luffy was a force of nature, his rubber body transforming and stretching in ways no one had seen before. His attacks combined devastating power with an almost playful unpredictability, overwhelming even Big Mom and Kaido. The war raged on, a titanic clash of wills and power, but in the end, the Straw Hats and the Alliance came to a standstill. Realizing that this war would cause the balance of the world to be overturned, the emperors decided to stop and end things here today. It was a necessary ceasefire considering the results would be devastating, especially since news reached the battlefield that another Yonko was being executed. The Marine headquarters had announced that Garp, the former hero of the Marines turned Emperor of the Sea, would be executed in a public display at Marineford. It was a declaration, a challenge to all pirates. The world government would not tolerate those who defied its authority. And the worst part of all of this was the sudden obliteration of the country of Wano. In a single night, the entire island had vanished without a trace, leaving only a massive hole in its place. The aftermath was the rising of sea levels all over the world, and it was a grave indicator of the destructive power of a weapon that the world government seemingly possessed. Garp's capture and the destruction of Wano sent tremors across the sea, and even Whitebeard realized the threat this would pose to the future. Luffy's heart was in turmoil. His desire to be Pirate King momentarily set aside. Saving Garp was all that mattered now. The Straw Hats set sail for Marineford. Ace and Sabo, Garp's protégés and Luffy's sworn brothers, were at his side, their eyes blazing with the same fierce resolve. The New World held its breath as rumors of the impending battle spread. Another war was coming, one that would determine the fate of legends and the future of the seas. The showdown at Marineford was about to begin. The Marines were prepared for an assault like no other, their forces bolstered with advanced weaponry. Rows of pacifistas lined the shoreline, their cold mechanical eyes scanning for any threat, while a line of Seraphim, the new generation of genetically enhanced super soldiers, stood behind them, exuding a fearsome aura. The admirals were present, each radiating a dangerous calm. Kizaru with his blinding light, Sakazuki with his deadly magma, and Fujitora with his gravity powers. And watching over it all from a high vantage point was Fleet Admiral Sengoku himself, determined to prove the might of the Marines. But the seas would not remain quiet for long. A massive wave of Conqueror's haki suddenly rippled across the waters, sending a chill down the spine of every Marine. The ocean seemed to boil as ships began to appear on the horizon. At the head of the fleet were the Moby Dick and the Red Force. Whitebeard had heard the news and sent word to Shanks that he would join them in this battle. And then, like a storm, the Thousand Sunny burst onto the scene, leading a fleet of allied pirate ships. The Straw Hats, Ace, and Sabo were here to rescue Garp. The war had begun. The pacifistas unleashed their devastating laser beams, ripping through the battlefield. But the Straw Hats were ready. Frankie, in his upgraded General Frankie armor, intercepted their attacks with a relentless barrage of weapons fire. Usopp provided cover from a distance, his sniping more precise than ever, while Brook's speed allowed him to cut through the mechanical soldiers with ease. The Seraphim, however, were a different story. Enhanced with the bloodlines of legendary figures and armed with a terrifying arsenal, they were unlike any opponents the pirates had faced. Zoro, his eyes burning with the intensity of a true swordsman, clashed with one wielding the power of Mihawk's swordsmanship. The battle was a deadly dance of blades, Zoro's three swords meeting the precision and speed of his cloned opponent. In the center of the battlefield, Whitebeard made his move. With a single swing of his Bisento, he split the very air, creating massive shockwaves that tore through the Marine defenses. The earth trembled, and Marineford itself began to shake under the force of his attacks. Whitebeard's arrival was the signal for the red-haired pirates to charge, and Shanks, drawing his legendary saber, moved with deadly precision. His haki was overwhelming, causing entire waves of Marines to collapse, unable to withstand the force of his will. Luffy, with Gear 5 fully activated, was a whirlwind of chaos and energy. His rubbery form stretched and moved with an almost cartoonish fluidity, but every attack hit with the force of a hurricane. He took on the Seraphim head-on, his fists becoming massive mallets that smashed through their defenses. His laughter echoed across the battlefield as he dodged Admiral Kizaru's beams of light, his newfound power making him a beacon of hope for all pirates present. On the platform, Garp remained calm, his eyes fixed on the battle unfolding below. Bound in chains and battered, he sat there without moving a muscle, but his determined spirit was unbroken. Memories of his time as a Marine and the choice he made to embrace the life of a pirate flashed through his mind. He watched as his grandsons, his friends, and his allies fought with everything they had. A smile crossed his face. This was the era he had helped shape. Suddenly, a deafening explosion shook Marineford. Whitebeard, with a mighty roar, drove his Bacento into the ground, causing the earth to crack open. The Marines were thrown into disarray, their formation shattered. At that moment, Shanks made his move, breaking through the lines with his crew and reaching the execution platform. With a surge of hockey that seemed to split the sky itself, Shanks shattered the chains holding Garp, and the legendary pirate was free. Garp moved, and his fist collided with the ground, sending a shockwave that sent the remaining Marines flying. His strength, even weakened, was a sight to behold. The battlefield roared with cheers as the tides had turned. Garp, alongside Luffy, Shanks, and Whitebeard, stood at the forefront, their combined power overwhelming. The battlefield was a blur of fists, swords, magma, and light. Luffy, with his Gear 5 fully unleashed, fought Sakazuki with a ferocity that was unmatched, his rubbery form twisting and stretching as he deflected the Admiral's magma fists. The battle raged for hours, each side refusing to yield. But slowly, the tide turned. The combined might of the Emperors, the Straw Hats, and their allies was too much, even for the Marines. With one final devastating attack, Whitebeard split the sky with a quake that shook Marineford to its core. The Marines, realizing their defeat, began to retreat. In the aftermath, Garp stood tall, his fist raised in victory. Marineford was in ruins, and the Marines' power shattered. It was a victory that would change the world. The day the combined forces of pirates had won a war that would be spoken of for generations. Subscribe for more One Piece content.